Welcome to today's edition of the LP Zone, where everything is all about loss prevention, retail security, organized retail crime, investigations on fraud, and really just about everything that has to do with the retail environment, whether you are at a mall or a big box store, a specialty store, a sporting goods store, whatever it might be. This is the right place for you to be, the LP Zone. Today we're talking about something that is not unique nor new to the world of loss prevention. And we're talking about violence. As we have seen in recent years, more and more mob actions happening at our retail locations. Not just one or two shoplifters at a time, but frequently we're seeing upwards of 50 shoplifters violently attacking anyone who would stand in their way. Now, recently, out in the LA area, a gang of about 50 plus hit a number of stores and were able to get away with a grand total almost of $500,000, almost $500,000 of merchandise taken in just a few days. And what did they do? They used beer spray on security officers. They physically attacked them. Well, my friend, that's no longer a shoplifting. That's an armed robbery. It doesn't have to be a firearm to be considered an armed robbery in most states. The moment they use force, whether that be physical, chemical, or some other weapon, it becomes armed robbery. Well, that changes the whole picture, the whole environment, the whole game plan for what security officers can do. Of course, we all know that security officers, depending on who you work for, depending on what the position is, they have different duties and they have different authority given to them by both their employer and the law. And while many employers still have hands up, don't touch them, let them steal what they will, don't try and prevent them from leaving. That mentality doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't protect employees, and it certainly doesn't teach the thieves any lessons. But there are some retailers that will allow loss prevention to use reasonable force to detain a shoplifter and or defend themselves. And so when we're talking about robbery, when we're talking about violent takeover robberies, now we're talking about high crimes. We're not talking about misdemeanor theft. Even in jurisdictions where a felony theft is over $1,000, and in some cases even higher than that, we're not talking about minor shoplifting. Now we're talking about major robbery. And we're talking about serious offenses with punishment of 10 years in prison. And if that merchandise is taken across state lines, now we are talking about federal offenses, much higher level of crime. And obviously, if the employer will allow you, you can take reasonable actions to apprehend those suspects. I mentioned on one of my radio shows that in some jurisdictions, local, county, state, and federal law enforcement have teamed up and formed organized retail crime investigative units working with LP agents, store management, corporate offices, the community, and just a whole chain of law enforcement and other stakeholders involved in preventing retail crime and apprehending the criminal. And every day, every week that we monitor the news, we see more and more involvement of law enforcement in ORC because they realize this is not just a petty crime. This is not someone stealing a couple of loaves of bread because they're hungry. This is not someone trying to support their family. These are organized criminals. No different than the crime mobs that ruled Las Vegas, New York, Chicago, and many other areas, and still do to some degree. We're talking about serious criminals that are out there doing harm to others. They're not stealing for the fun of it. They're not, it's not a five-finger discount type situation. Somebody just is a thief by nature. No, these are criminals. They have all got together. They put together a plan. They put together a plan of attack. They arm themselves with weapons. We've seen firearms used. We've seen knives. We've seen brass knuckles. Bear spray has been used recently in a number of attacks. And on and on and on. So this is not petty theft. This is armed robbery. Depending on the retailer, the employee's authority, and their option to move forward with aggressively trying to apprehend the shoplifters or the armed robbers is going to vary depending on the state statute as well as the employer. But we are seeing more stores smacking off from that. Don't touch them. Just let them go. We're seeing more stores get involved. Now, when I come back, I want to tell you about a group of stores nationwide who don't care about observe and report. They care about their money. They care about their assets. They care about their people, and they're taking action. You're listening to the LP Zone, a production of Blue Ram Media Group, LLC, and Private Officer International. And we're coming right back after these couple of PSAs, public service announcements. Remember, you can always follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/private officer. And you can also check us out on Twitter at twitter.com/private officer. Follow our news at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com. And, of course, we're also on a couple of other social media platforms as well. And contact us anytime, 24/7, help desk at privateofficer.com. We'll be right back. Are you looking for the finest private security officer training in the Charlotte metropolitan area? Do you need PPS qualifications in armed or unarmed training? Or maybe you're over there across the line in South Carolina and you need the SLED training. Well, we've got the right training at the right time for you. Premier Training Academy, located at 5624 Executive Center Drive, Suite 142 in metropolitan Charlotte, North Carolina. Give them a call today, 704-806-4933. They also offer firearms training, personal protection, first aid and CPR, and so much more. Call John at 704-806-4933.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over. When you see lights,
Vests or reflectors.
please give us some room. Slow down and move over. When you need us,
We've got your back.
you have ours.
You got our back?
You got ours? You got our back? Please, slow down.
And move over.
Welcome back to the Private Officer Beat Productions. Today, our program, the LP Zone, is talking about loss prevention and takeover robberies, gangs, force. A moment ago, we were talking about how many retailers have just been hands off on these mob robberies, and that's what they are, robberies. And many have said, no, don't worry about them, don't touch them, let them come, let them take, let them go. Just don't want any employees injured. Don't want any customers injured. We don't want to tick them off where they use force. So just let them go. Don't worry about it. It's just property. Maybe the insurance company will pay us for it. Maybe they'll pay our loss. Maybe not, but even if not, at least no one is getting injured. But you know what? It's really not about that anymore. And recently, a number of convenience store owners and employees and small retailers have begun fighting back. We're seeing across the country more and more mom and pop stores, small specialty retailers, sporting goods. Just the other day I saw a video about a guitar store, a regional store, music store, that took down a thief who was stealing a guitar and trying to make it to the door, and they took him down to the floor, and they put a bear hug on him, and they tied him up, not literally, but they had a wrestling move on him, and they got him down, and they told him, we're going to let you up, we're going to take that guitar back, and if we ever see you again, you're going to be sorry. And they let him up after holding him for a while, and he was not in the best of physical conditions. They didn't whoop up on him, but they let him know that they meant business. And this is a national chain. It's a smaller music store, the Guitar Center. But I think that you're seeing more and more people just getting fed up with the crime, getting fed up with police not being able to. And I want to make the point, it's not that they don't want to take enforcement action. They do. They want to arrest the bad guys. That's their job. But because of political reasons, because of politicians, many DAs don't prosecute shoplifting unless it is a robbery. Many DAs, a lot of areas have changed their laws to make felonies, shoplifting felonies, the threshold so high. In some areas, it's $1,500 before it becomes a felony. In others, it's $1,000. It may even be higher than that in some areas. It makes it very difficult for police to do their jobs. We've seen over the last couple of weeks as well a number, at least 3 that I can think of right offhand. Convenience stores, bodegas they call them in New York and up in the New England, Jersey area. A 7-Eleven store, which is a franchise, is owned independently. They literally beat up thieves. In one case, the thief came in with an empty garbage can on wheels, one of those plastic ones that you see rolling around like, stores and businesses, and just began filling it up, taking all the cigarettes and beer and so forth. And all of a sudden, out of the back rooms and behind the counter came the men with sticks, large sticks, and they just began beating him like they would in their foreign country. And they put a pretty good beating on him, and they kept on beating him long after he was submissive. And they kicked his butt out of the store, and I will guarantee you he probably won't come back anytime soon. Another similar situation happened at a 7-Eleven. Same thing. Some immigrant store employees took that shoplifter, and they continued to beat him and beat him and beat him. And I just read yesterday that the prosecutors decided no charges against the employees. They were just defending themselves and their property, and the prosecution, they declined charges, which is good. But we're seeing more and more and more and more of this. I also saw a video where a person had robbed a woman and knocked her down and took her purse and kicked her, and a couple of guys, again, came out of no place and chased down this person, and they literally beat him and beat him severely. Again, no, it probably wasn't exactly legal or the right thing to do, but pretty much it's necessary these days. And I haven't heard whether or not those two will be charged with anything, but I can tell you that they were defending the woman. It was a robbery, and they probably used the force they thought necessary to subdue the person. And again, one more example. Again, just yesterday, I saw a video where a police officer had stopped someone and was frisking the person, and the person spun around and hit the officer, or tried to hit the officer in the face, and the two went to fisticuffs, as they say. They started exchanging blows. The officer was then able to knock the man to the ground. But that's not the end of it. The man continued to fight, kick, throw some punches while the officer was trying to get him subdued. So the officer began, again, using what is reasonable force, the force taught at the academy, and that was using punches to subdue the man while he was on the ground. The officer used a number of punches, and some of them to the face, the head, the body, to get the man under control and handcuffed. Maybe that didn't look good to some viewers, but it was legal and necessary and reasonable force. He could have used a taser. He could have used a baton. He could have used pepper spray at that point. But he chose to use hand-to-hand, and that was more than justified and more than legal. Across the country, we are seeing more and more civilians and police who are fed up with the crime. They're fed up with violent offenders. They are fed up with the way society just thinks that it's no big deal to rob and steal and commit violent crimes and kill. Things are definitely out of control. But I can see many, many store owners, store employees fighting back. And unfortunately, that means that more employees, more officers will be injured and possibly even killed. And it's really a sad day and time, but we have to defend ourselves, our family, our property. We have to take action. It's our God-given right. You say, well, the Bible says, thou shalt not kill. There's also many examples of where the Bible God allowed his people to defend themselves. And that's what we're doing. We're defending ourselves. And taking a life in self-defense is more than justified and reasonable, as long as it is the right amount of force. I'm not talking about shooting someone who comes into the store and steals a shirt. I'm not talking about beating someone half to death because he stole a candy bar. But if they are resisting, if they are assaulting, if they are fighting, you have a right to defend yourself. And across this country, we're using technology to help us to do that. I've mentioned in a previous LP Zone radio show that some stores have begun using facial recognition, license plate readers, and technology that captures that information the biometrics and other things from the shoplifter so that they can track them down after the fact. And police department LPRs, license plate readers, across the city have helped with numerous cases of grand theft where shoplifters have stolen from a store and then taken off in a motor vehicle, and that vehicle was later captured on an LPR camera, and they were able to run the tag and grab the suspect, make an arrest after the fact. Technology is great. It goes hand in hand with physical security. But today, we're primarily talking about force, use of force. The elevation of weapons of any type during the commission of a shoplifting or a physical force of any type changes the whole scenario from a theft to a robbery. And when the employer and the law allows it, you can use reasonable physical force or weapons to detain or defend yourself. You can detain that person. You can defend yourself. I think that because we, for the last 3 or 4 years, have laid down, rolled over, and played dead, that many criminals just believe that civilians and police alike are going to continue to do so. But I got news for you. I've been around this place for a long, long time. I've seen things one way, and 5 years later, things change. I've seen, hands off, observe and report. I've seen that model change repeatedly. And I think that we're seeing that happen right now. The key here is to use good judgment to be able to assess the danger, the threat level. Don't go in all, cowboy up. If you're not armed, if you don't have the defensive mechanism, you don't have the weaponry, you don't have the ability to go in and use physical force to detain, arrest these subjects, the best thing you can do is be a good witness. And I know sometimes that, it sucks. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes it really just makes you feel, it irritates me, it makes me angry. But sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to be a good witness. That's going to conclude today's edition of the LP Zone, where everything is all about loss prevention. Remember, Private Officer International is now accepting new members. If you are a loss prevention agent, a organized retail crime investigator, a uniformed security officer, go to our website at privateofficer.org. Until the next time, y'all be safe, be blessed, and we'll see you back here on the radio.